Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the University of Minnesota's Certificate in Election Administration webinar. My name is Doug Chapin. I'm director of the program at the University of Minnesota. I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day today to join us. What I'd like to do is just give you a brief overview of the program and then turn it over to the real reason for our session, our terrific experts in the field of election administration who also serve as faculty for the program. That would be Tammy Patrick, Dana Chisnell, and Whitney Quesenbery. But before we get started with them, really quickly just want to give folks an overview of the University of Minnesota's program. The Certificate in Election Administration has a very simple but lofty mission, and that's to identify, recruit, and train the next generation of election officials in America. We know that there are many people across the country doing their work professionally, but we're trying to build a formal profession of election administration and give people educational opportunities that will help them meet that goal. We really have three basic audiences for the program. The first are current election officials across the country who are seeking to broaden and deepen their knowledge, to take what they've learned in their own community and put it into a more national or profession-wide context. We also seek to educate current students at the master's and undergraduate level who are looking to learn more or deepen their knowledge of election administration. And finally, professionals in other fields who are seeking to gain entry into election administration. These are lawyers, tech folks, usability experts, designers, and the like, who end up essentially rubbing elbows with election officials, and like many election officials, catching the election bug and wanting to learn more. And as I pointed out, bachelor's degree is no longer required to be a part of the program. I originally started out as a master's only, but the feedback we got is that we wanted to open the program to everyone, and so it's available to anyone across the country, regardless of whether or not you have a bachelor's degree. Here are the courses that we offer in the program. I teach a survey of election administration and elections in the law. My colleague, Larry Jacobs, teaches a strategic management of election administration, essentially what it's like to be a nonpartisan actor in a political world. You're going to hear more from Tammy, Dana, and Whitney about their classes in election design and data analysis. We also just finished a course this fall on voter participation that looks at outreach to traditionally underrepresented groups in the election process. And then finally, for students who are completing the program, there is an election capstone, which gives them an opportunity to work on a real-world problem with a real-world client and apply what they've learned throughout the program. The reason for the webinar today is that we're beginning our spring semester next week. I've talked a lot in the past on webinars like this and elsewhere about my courses, but really wanted to give people an opportunity to hear from our terrific experts in both data analysis and election design. And so let me pass the baton to my friend and colleague, Tammy Patrick. Tammy is a former local election official in Maricopa County, Arizona, was a member of the Presidential Commission on Election Administration under the previous White House administration, and a well-respected national expert on not just collection of data, but analysis of data for election administration. And we're delighted that she has agreed to design and teach a course on data analysis for election administrators. So Tammy, I will pass you the ball, and you can take it from here.
Wonderful. Great. And I even remembered, I think, to unmute myself, so that's a first. So good afternoon and good morning, everyone. It's really exciting for me to participate in this program. Having grown up in Minnesota and being a big Golden Gophers fanatic, it's pretty exciting for me. What I wanted to do today was kind of go over briefly what the course is and why we felt it was an interesting and necessary element to add to this particular project and program. So really, why do we care about data in elections? Because we know that we count the ballots, we call the winners, but why do we even care about the rest of it? So throughout my time in Maricopa County, it was really important to me to be able to have data that would allow us to measure our own performance and then also benchmark against others to see if there were ways that we could in fact service our voters in a more efficient or a more effective manner. So that's really kind of the genesis of the foundation of the coursework itself. When I served on the PCEA, data collection and data analysis was something that we recommended because we found that it was in fact challenging to be able to make some conclusions that we could draw nationally because the data analysis, the data were just too disparate and difficult to ascertain. So what we want to do in this course is rethink election administration of what data are already available and can be consumed easily, and how can we leverage that to better inform decision making. So we talk a lot about leveraging systems data to be able to make new and informed decisions, but also how do we then make it easily consumable, and talk a lot about data visualization and provide tools and kind of the skill set to be able to turn that information around to inform our voters. So the course is laid out with introductory units that kind of talk a little bit about data collection methods that exist currently in elections, and then reviewing who are our audiences and how do they consume data. And then we move into pre-election day units. You can tell I'm a former election administrator because everything is pre-election day, and post-election day organization. So the pre-election day, we look at resource allocation tools. What can we pull from the various systems, both within our jurisdiction, but within other departments in the jurisdiction? So what sort of information might we gain from an assessor's website or an assessor's data set to be able to know where would be most efficiently placed drop boxes for vote by mail or polling locations? And then what's out there externally that maybe individuals aren't aware of? For Election Day, we talk in Unit 8 about command centers and other data that's collected on Election Day that an election administrator may want to consider. And then some of the ways in which the vendors are using systems data to innovate how they provide various services to administrators. The post-election day analysis, there we go, is of course the most robust part of the course, because that's where we really look back and see what the data tells to tell the story hopefully well. So we talk about election day reporting, the ways in which vote by mail and absentee discussions can take place, by what sort of data we can gain there, and then election day data analysis, where are the gaps in the data. We briefly cover redistricting in one unit. That could, quite frankly, be a course in and of itself, but we wanted to, of course, touch upon it because we're coming into 2020 census and others. And then the last units are finals and peer review. So a typical unit looks like there's a brief video presentation from me that kind of lays out the topic. There are some additional media content from videos and audio snippets from academics and leaders in the field. And then there's some readings and discussions and assignments. So we really tried to hear from literally the rock stars in election administration, whether it's other academics or individuals out there in the field helping to inform us on the best ways to do things. So this is a screenshot from the very first overview slide from Unit 3, so you get an understanding kind of where we're drawing the information from. It's not only by election administrators and academics. We also draw from nonprofits, from the Election Assistance Commission, and really get a good look at all the information that's out there. And then, as I mentioned before, how do we take that data and use it in a way that we can tell our story well? For me, one of the main points of this course is to give some practical solutions of what is being done out in the field in jurisdictions large and small. So examples like this one from Kansas City, where they're using Google Analytics and other things to gather their troubleshooter information out in the field of how many miles are they traveling, what do they need to be reimbursed, and then dumping that into Google Forms and Google Coordinate to help monitor what's going out in the field on Election Day. And that's really some just practical applications. So this class has a little bit of math in it. It's not a statistics course. We do briefly discuss the next two slides, which is Little's Law, as Charles Stewart from MIT discusses it. So we talk a little bit about some of the math behind it, but it is certainly not a statistics course. In that same vein, there's a lot going on currently with risk-limiting audits. So this is the perfect time to really have a robust discussion about how that sort of data can play into the analysis of elections after the fact to make sure that, in fact, the correct winner won. And it wouldn't be a data course with me involved if it didn't have something to do with the Postal Service and vote-by-mail balloting and how we can use that data to inform that process. So we look at things like the data collected by Mike Ertel down in Seminole County and how the design, and this ties directly into Dana and Whitney you're going to hear from next, how we can take a look at the design of our materials and how redesigning things to make it more informative to our voters can in fact impact the data that we collect, and we can demonstrate the validity of having better design, of making changes, which sometimes can cost money, but being able to turn around and say, look, we had a drop in the number of ballots missing a signature. We had an overall drop in rejected ballots. That is really, really critical. So those are just kind of some examples of the things that we talk about in class. We make sure that we provide with good practical solutions after the sound data collection is done. So the assignments themselves, we really expect students to participate in discussions and readings. There are a couple of small group assignments, including one project where we take a look at proposing a vote center solution for an example jurisdiction and working through that process together to get an idea of the sort of things to consider when moving to that sort of policy decision. Another big assignment is one to look at and see if there are elections in your area and whether or not you can do some possible data collection at the polls. In lieu of that, you can interview state or local officials on their particular use of data, which is another thing that's acceptable. And then the semester-long assignment is really to select a certain policy or reform and collect data on it with a particular jurisdiction in mind, and then by the end of the course, you'll have data visualizations you will have created for or against a certain reform or policy, and then you present it as a video to the class as though you're talking to two separate types of audiences, whether it's a public hearing, a legislative session, or you're perhaps asking for funding for something like electronic poll books or new voting equipment. So the course really seeks to provide ideas on where to find data within the existing system, the kind of questions to consider, and the tools that are already out there and available to analyze and make the data come to life for your audiences. So I have to include this because last spring semester, one of my students, it was posted on social media when she was working on one of our projects, and I'm not claiming that you'll feel the need to post on social media every time you work on a project for this course, but who knows, you might if you're one of those notorious election data geeks. This very well might be the course for you. So with that, that's my contact information, and I think at this point I turn it back over to Doug.
Thank you very much, Tammy. And really quickly, before we move on to Dana and Whitney, do want to let folks know that if you have questions that arise during the presentation, we are leaving time at the end to answer those. So you can hit that little Q&A bar down there in the lower right-hand side of your screen and ask a question, and we will work through those at the end of the session. But please do feel free to ask questions as they pop up. Next, I want to turn things over to first Dana Chisnell, who is, along with her colleague Whitney Quesenbery, really the co-founder of the growing science of election design across the country. Dana and Whitney have founded something called the Center for Civic Design and have worked with us at the University of Minnesota on projects looking at of wide variety of topics, including how you design systems and materials to help poll workers close polls at the end of the day, which is often underappreciated, a very difficult job. They'll tell you a little bit more about their work, but I think it's fair to say that no two people have done more to bring design thinking to elections and to enliven and enrich election administration as much as Dana and Whitney have, and that's why we're delighted that they are teaching election design again this spring at the University of Minnesota. So Dana, I'm passing you the ball. And you're on.
All right, thank you so much for that, Doug. Obviously, one of the features of the course is not slide design, because we submitted slides in 16:9 and everybody else is in 3:4. So anyway, we'll see about aspect ratio. As Doug said, I'm co-director at the Center for Civic Design, and I am super excited that we're getting a chance to teach the third installation of this course on election design. Elections are full of designed artifacts, from forms like vote by mail to voter information to a whole bunch of technology and user interfaces, including ballots in various formats. But those things don't always work well for their intended users, and so we are teaching this course in the hopes that people will come away with the ability to identify good and bad design in election materials and use that knowledge to review their own materials or review materials that they work with outside of the election department to provide input to people creating those materials. We hope that you will get a chance to practice basic election design, including plain language and layout, and design is applied to like common election materials like voter information, how to vote instructions, poll worker and candidate manuals and forms, and of course ballots. Another objective is that you should be able to apply your design principles to real election materials within typical time, financial, and legislative constraints. This is practical. This is not a greenfield kind of project that you're going to be working on. We also will give you the chance to evaluate the usability of election materials for voters and other users using a bunch of different techniques. And I am trying to move through the slides. There we go. All of those artifacts are made by someone. That's design. We can also help you we can help you be more intentional. We can help you communicate more clearly. The idea here is that everyone is designing already. The question is, how good are you at knowing what's going to work for people? And so, second reason to take the course is to learn some practical approaches to kind of typical challenges that people in election departments and in government generally face in making things usable and accessible for their audiences. We love collaboration and partnering, so you're going to get lots of support both from us as instructors and from your fellow students. There's a rich conversation that happens throughout the course in learning from one another. We'll also give you lots of chances to practice what you're learning. There will be assignments and activities with every unit that give you tools for trying out the things that you will also be including in your project for the semester. Whitney and I are available almost all the time, and there are lots of different channels for you to bounce ideas off of us. We have lots of experience in user experience design inside and outside of government. And so, and lots of stories to tell if you're interested in hearing them. So we are delighted to make ourselves available online or on the phone whenever you would like to talk with us. Those are 5 big reasons that we think that you should take this course. To give you a little background on what you'll be doing in the course, all of the materials that we'll be using are available online electronically. We require 2 main publications, one of which is available on our website for free. It's the Field Guides for Ensuring Voter Intent, and a book that I wrote with Jeff Rubin called The Handbook of Usability Testing, 2nd edition. But we also highly recommend that you purchase and use for the course these other 3 books. One is A Web for Everyone. This is a book by Whitney and with Sarah Horton about accessibility. But that is cutting it. That doesn't begin to describe the great features of this book. You get really beautiful stuff out of it. Letting Go of the Words is all about plain writing and plain talk, and that is written by Ginny Reddish. And Forms That Work. Government doesn't operate without forms, and our colleague and friend Caroline Jarrett has written a beautiful book. All 3 of these books, all of these things are things that you will use well beyond the course. And so I highly recommend that you get those as well. But there will be lots of other materials, articles, and blog posts that I think you'll find to be a rich trove of goodness. To give you a picture of the topics that we'll practice in the course, we're really about focusing on understanding users' needs and how to know whether you're meeting them. So we're going to start out by getting big picture about what election design is and what the experience is like for voters in America. Next, we'll focus on really the core of practically everything that happens in elections in terms of interacting with poll workers and voters, and that is plain language. There's so much jargon that sneaks into a domain like this that we want to give tools to everyone for focusing on language that everybody understands. A key element in making sure that you're meeting users' needs and being able to measure how well you're doing is a technique called usability testing. It's super simple and straightforward, and we're going to spend 2 units working on that and giving you some practice so you can go do some of your own in your course project. Incredibly important to making sure that everyone who is eligible can exercise their franchise is accessibility. And we'll be talking about that not only in terms of marking a ballot, but getting access to the polling place and other aspects of participating in elections. In week 7, we'll work on selecting your course project. There's a wide range of stuff that you could work on, and we want to make it interesting and useful for you and your team inside your election department. So that'll be a focus in week 7. In week 8, we're going to go digital and focus on information architecture and content strategy for election department websites and answering voters' questions online. Week 9, we'll go to what should be in voter guides and voter education and how to address the questions that people have in different channels. Again, on week 10, we go to forms and legal notices and how to make those as easy for people to do the right thing as possible. Forms design is a discipline that we think is underappreciated, and you'll come away with some really good insights about why some of the forms that you interact with on a day-to-day basis are not that great. Finally, wrapping up the main topics, we will spend some time working on communication strategy. So where should you communicate with voters, and which channels should you be using in terms of which medium should you be reaching for. We'll give you a couple of weeks towards the end of the course to actually use all the things that you've learned in the individual units to work on your course project, and we'll interact online to give you some feedback and critique. So you won't just be out there in the cold, but we'll make sure that you learn what you really want to and need to learn out of your course project. And then in week 16, we will wrap up. A key element of the course is the project. So you'll work on something that's really practical and realistic, and we'll wrap all that up at the end. Whitney, what if you aren't an election worker? What will you get out of the course?
Well, it's really interesting because election design is those two words. It's both learning about a design, and when we say design, we don't mean graphic design or being an illustrator. We mean thinking about how to put information together in whether it's in paper or online or some sort of visual form, so that it makes it possible for people to understand and use it. And then elections is that it's applied to the field of elections. So if you're working in an election department, maybe you came in with a really great background in public administration, but you'd love to have some of the skills that Dana just outlined. If you're someone who's, maybe we actually had a student who'd been a poll worker and kind of got the election office bug and thought she was using this course and, in fact, this whole program to qualify to train yourself to be an election worker. But maybe you're a designer and you're someone who's already doing things like designing websites or brochures, but you're thinking elections would be a great place to work, or even government in general, because I think that a lot of what we talk about goes along with the trend towards innovation and modernization in state and local government. You might bring your design skills and your design superpowers, but you'll be learning how those are both apply in elections and also how to work within the constraints of an election. Maybe you're someone who comes in with a sort of law or political science background, and you're thinking about how you could make sure that the things that you're writing into policy get implemented well, so that people actually understand what they're doing. It's great to have good constraints on, say, a voter registration form, so that it communicates clearly and is legal. But now we have to make sure that people understand what they're doing as they fill out that form. And when we put all those perspectives together in a class, it actually makes the whole class richer, so that people can learn from each other. As we said, every assignment that we give, you post a version of it online, and everybody can look and critique, and then you get some time in the week to revise it, hopefully by liberally borrowing the good ideas that you've seen, or learning why your idea was a good idea to start with, so that it actually mimics the real world in which we show things to not only to users but to each other. We learn about them, we get inspiration from other places, and we use that to make our work better. We've certainly seen that in our work with election offices, that fabulous changes happen when one election officer says, I think we could do this better, and they post something, and then somebody else replies to that and says, well, in our county, here's how we do it, and builds up a kind of instant seminar on how to fix whatever problem they're talking about by bringing in experiences from different parts of, say, the state. So all of the assignments, and there is one in almost every week, are really an opportunity to take a basic skill of design and practice it in this very specific domain of elections. So we cover all kinds of materials, hopefully whatever you're interested in, whether you're running in candidate services, or you're working in voter education, or you're on the back doing the tally systems, gets touched somehow, because no matter how technical your job is, you still probably have to communicate it, and communicating it clearly helps everyone. So we hope that we'll have that there'll be a nice rich thing. If you have questions, I think the next thing we're going to have is our contact information. Yeah, we'd happy to answer questions about how your background might relate to the course material and any questions you might have about what you get out of the course.
We'd love to hear from you. And now we'll turn it back to Doug.
Thank you very much, Dana. We'll do some logistics at the end, but at this point, wanted to ask my colleague Lee Chittenden, who is moderating the questions. Do we have questions for the presenters?
There are no questions yet.
No questions
if you
yet.
have
All right,
some,
then.
please send them in.
All right, and well, then Lee, since you are already on the line, let me go ahead and let me hand it off to you to do a little bit of business on the program.
Great, thanks, Doug. I just wanted to provide some more information on cost for the classes in the program, as well as information on how to register for the courses. So the undergraduate rate is $492 a credit. The graduate rate is $927. So for either Tammy's course or for Dana and Whitney's course, you're looking at a little under $1,984 for the undergrad level and about $1,800 for the graduate level course, because their courses are both 2 credits each. The full certificate program is 12 credits. And so to complete the full certificate at the undergrad level, it's about $6,000, and the graduate level is about $11,000. As Doug mentioned earlier, we do now have the undergraduate level of the certificate, so if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you can enroll in that certificate. If you do have a bachelor's degree, you can still take the undergraduate level or the graduate level. It's up to you. So it depends on what you're looking to get out of it. But both options are available to you. And the requirements are basically for the undergrad, 1 year of work experience in the election administration field or 45 college credits. And for the graduate level, the requirement is a bachelor's degree. I did want to mention as well that if you take a course now before enrolling in the full program, it would still count towards the certificate at a later date. So there is still time to register. As Doug mentioned, the semester starts Tuesday, January 16th. You do need to register by Monday the 15th in order to avoid a late registration fee. The way you would register now is as a non-degree seeking student. You'll see a link here on the slide that lays out the steps for registering. And as I mentioned before, any classes you take as a non-degree seeking student would still count towards the certificate if you enrolled in the full certificate program at a later date. In order to enroll, it's pretty easy, but I would contact me. My information is on the screen there to walk you through the steps and make sure you get registered. We do need to start that process this week in order, like I said, to get registered before the deadline of Monday. You'll also find on the page there a link to the certificate information page, which lists out a bunch of information on the curriculum, the requirements, links to apply to the program, etc. That's all the information I have to give you. I do have one question here.
Yeah, actually, Lee, I've seen it pop up too. So
okay.
Let me go ahead and one person is asking for the election design course. Will the course need participation on an exact day of the week or time? And the answer to that is no. All of our courses are offered fully online. So it's not like going to a brick and mortar classroom where you are in a classroom for in a specific place for a specific amount of time, once or twice a week. We do move weekly through the course, so you'll need to work on the weekly schedule. And usually there are a couple of due dates during the week, usually one mid to late week, and then another one at the end of the week with a larger project. But you do not need to be in a specific place at a specific time. We've actually had students literally around the world, doing their contributions in the wee hours of the American morning. So you don't need to be in a specific place at a specific time as long as you are keeping up. I've got a couple, or I've got one for Dana and Whitney. Is there any difference in substance between the undergraduate and graduate levels for the design course?
This is Whitney. No, there actually isn't. You will all both, whatever level you choose to sign up at, you'll work through the course together. At the very end of your project, the graduate students have a more substantial requirement for presenting their project than the undergraduate students do.
And I'll observe that that actually holds for all of the courses as well. So, for example, in the survey course, graduate students have a longer paper and a presentation required. The undergraduates have a shorter paper and a lower presentation requirement, and that typically is the experience in all of the classes. But the day-to-day, week-to-week, graduates and undergraduates discuss the readings together, interact with one another constantly, and so even though the final grading requirements are lower, they are not separate in terms of the course. Somebody else asked if there's a way of taking courses for no credit, essentially auditing the course for lower cost. I think the answer to that is no, but I'm going to defer to Lee, who knows more about these things than I do. Lee?
Yeah, Doug, you're right. There is not, you can audit a course, but the university still makes you pay the same, so you might as well take it for credit.
Yeah, so if for some reason, and I do have students in some of my classes who take courses for essentially pass-fail because maybe they don't want to worry so much about the grade, but my understanding is that they are fully enrolled like all other students. Any other questions out there? Anything, Dana, Whitney, Tammy, anything else that's come up that you'd like to add in the time that we have left?
Yeah, hi, this is Dana. In terms of participating, we don't require a specific day and time, but there is definitely a weekly rhythm, and discussions online tend to happen sort of early to mid-week because assignments are usually due on Thursday or Friday, and so that will play out. But otherwise, there's not a specific time that you have to show up, and there isn't a specific time that you have to take part. As long as you do take part, that's one of the things that makes the course actually work.
And indeed, you are graded on that a little bit. So there's a small portion of the grade that looks at your class participation because it's a little incentive to be there. We also have both graded and ungraded assignments. So they're early in the week, there's some activities. They're not really assignments. There's some activities that help you kind of get into the subject matter, and then that gets pulled together with an assignment by the end of the week.
And this is Tammy. My classes are the same as well, with the exception that I do have a couple of convenings that we do online, some live sessions, but there are only usually 2 or 3 of them, just to kind of touch base with everyone and get that sort of live interaction. So we do have those, but I try and schedule them in the evenings for individuals that have day jobs, as it were. And so we do try and coordinate that and have it more in the evening time for students.
I also have another question. This one is about the design course, but I'll toss it to Tammy as well. How many hours of lecture versus time spent on assignments are there per week?
This is Dana. Altogether for the election design course, you should expect to spend about 6 hours a week between reviewing materials that are available for each of the units, participating in online discussions, doing the activities, doing the readings, and doing whatever assignments there are. We don't have a scheduled lecture times, so it's basically a flipped classroom. there are videos and articles, and you're expected to do those outside of a scheduled course time, and then we talk about them online.
Yeah, I would say the same holds true for my course as well. We have a very brief, it's usually around 10 to at most 15-minute kind of precursor for the entire unit for that week. Presentation that I walk through kind of what the topic is and things to think of as you work through that week's materials. And then most weeks have at least one short reading, although there might be multiple readings in a given week, but a lot of it tends to rely on other kinds of media, whether it's audio interviews with individuals like Don Rahill of the AP talking about election night results reporting, or you know, an individual who has done something, you know, really spectacular in how they used data to advance a policy like online voter registration when it passed in Florida. So a lot of it tends to rely on short videos and audio clips that usually run no more than 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, this is Whitney. We have fewer audio clips than Tammy does, but we do have some of our quote readings are links to videos out in the field, but a lot of what we've done is tried to pull material from the kind of best writing or thinking about civic design. And so what you're getting is material that's not exactly ripped from the headlines, but certainly ripped from the current discussion of how to do things. We have some showcases that show how actual election departments have transformed materials from not working as well to working better, and so on. There is not a lot of footnotes in our material.
And one more question. Tammy mentioned the live events. When you all do your what are called synchronous events, what time of day do you usually do your online live gatherings?
Early evening.
Yeah, we try to schedule them for 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time, so that they are late afternoon for the other time zones.
Great.
In the U.S. And if we find that we have lots of students who are international, we'll figure it out. But we try to make it convenient for as many students to be there as possible.
Right.
Great.
And we're also available for kind of office hours.
Yeah, almost all the time.
Wonderful. And I have one more question about schedule of upcoming courses. That's available on the CEA info page that you see there. That gives you a list of what's available when the survey course, the elections and the law course, and the capstone are available this spring, in addition to Dana, Whitney, and Tammy's courses. In the fall, we'll again have Larry Jacobs' class and the voter participation. Usually the survey and law courses run just about every semester based on demand, since those are both required for the certificate. But if you have any questions or are looking for a specific course in a specific semester, absolutely let us know. Well, good. It looks like we've worn out all of our Q&A. I want to thank my colleagues Tammy, Dana, and Whitney for taking the time today, and especially for contributing their expertise and their energy to the program. We're really proud of what we've built at the university, in large part because of the quality of the people we've had an opportunity to work with. If you are on this webinar and on the fence about whether or not you'd like to join us for the spring or beyond, please do reach out and let us know. We would love to have you. We believe in the future of the program, the future of the profession, and we'd like to do what we can to help bring you on board. So with that, I will thank everybody for dialing in. I will thank you for giving us a little bit of your time, and we will see you on the internet. Thank you.